Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm Aki Fujimura, CEO of D2S, the managing company sponsor of the eBeam initiative. Today we have Jed Rankin, my good friend.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, he's from IBM, and he's been the president of BACUS PUV Conference of SPIE for the last 2 years. And me being on the committee for 4 years, I saw a very, very positive, strong change in the last 4 years, and I really appreciate that. So I want to thank you. But I also want to ask you about the secret. Like, what did you do, first of all, and then, what is it about you and Emily that made this change happen?
Well, it's a good question. First of all, I appreciate the compliment that there have been a lot of changes. What I've done is, largely I went in and looked and thought about everything we're doing and is it adding value, and thought about how we can try to make things better. So there were a lot of changes, but going back to Emily, I learned a lot from her in terms of asking the questions about what we're doing for the community and what BACUS stands for. So, I mean, some of the changes we have made, we looked at things like the processes that we had in place. We were doing the newsletter. It was a very long-standing process that actually went back to the history of mailing out newsletters. It evolved into an email newsletter. We looked at the statistics with the SPIE team and said, this is a lot of work that's going into this. Is this getting the effect that we want in terms of distribution and recognition? We looked at it and we tweaked the process, and it evolved into the webinar series that we're seeing is actually touching a lot more people and getting more people involved, not only in the conference, but in the industry as well. Mm-hmm. So there's been a number of other changes that we've made. Again, going back to a lot of the influence from Emily, such as really elevating the student outreach committee to make sure that students are involved, feel like they're a valuable part of the conference, that they're welcome here to come learn and ask questions. And I guess that goes back to just sort of my leadership style of I want to be inclusive. This is an organization and an event that we have to try to spread our learning around, to spread our excitement for the industry. We want to do that, make that as effective as possible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people in these kinds of committees, not just BACUS, but elsewhere too, have this, just keep it going, just operationally keep it going kind of mentality. And any change is risk, right? And sometimes people don't like it and they might complain or, and people don't want that kind of trouble. So they just stay the course, right? But you didn't take that approach, right? Things with the entertainment that used to be with BACUS.
Right. Entertainment was a long-standing part of BACUS. And one of the first things that we looked at is that still part of who we want to be as BACUS? Right? And honestly, does it fit with today's culture? Does it fit with the group that is attending BACUS? And how do we do this in a way that's effective? In the past, right, BACUS entertainment was really self-organized, self-initiated. It was a small, really local group. It became harder to do that as we got bigger and global. And so we looked at things and we wanted to make sure everyone's included. But certainly, as you said, there were a lot of complaints about the things we did. There's always going to be people who don't like the things you do. When we have those things come up, I like to have an honest conversation with people and say, are we doing this because we've always done it, or are we doing this because it's really making the situation better?
Yeah, and things have changed a lot too with the internet and social media,
right? And
also COVID, right? I mean, during your time,
sure, certainly.
Right? Yeah.
And go back to some of the other things you said. We've tried a lot of things, and certainly they haven't all been successful. So I think that's the other key things. We just keep trying to make changes until we get things better, and incrementally try to work our way to a better situation.
Yeah. One of the things that happened in the content of what BACUS had to cover, I think you were a big proponent of making sure that the non-EUV leading edge got some attention, right? What did you see there?
Right. I observed over the last few years, especially with EUV and BACUS photomask coming together, that the topics and the content was really being dominated by EUV. First of all, it was the shiny new technology.
Makes sense.
That's fairly natural. And So most of the energy was going there. But when you look at the distribution of masks that are made around the world, still most of them are not EUV. Most of the wafers that are made around the world are not EUV. So what we tried to do is create an environment and make sure that we catered to the types of problems that the non-leading edge providers were coming in, because there are those problems. Honestly, whether it's a new fab making 180 nanometer or a new fab making 3 nanometer, given the quality of the tools that they're able to buy, the tolerances they're trying to hit are just as difficult for each of them. So we shouldn't discount legacy nodes as being easy. It's only easy if we use the overpriced tools that are made for 2 nanometer. So we wanted to really give that community an opportunity to come in and allow them to show how they're continued learning to deal with the new problems as they evolve for these legacy technologies. And those problems include tools becoming obsolete, new equipment coming into place to try to support that. How you qualify a customer that you've been running with the same process for 10 years when it's simply not available anymore. And through the course of that, I think we've seen a ton of growth. When we look at the conference today, the BACUS side is actually a little larger than the EUV side. So it's a tremendous switch from the last couple of years.
Yeah. There's this year's BACUS is much bigger. I think there's 100 more attendees or something, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty amazing coming back, Like, on non-EUV topics, same with that. What's the situation with the leading edge node? Like, what's the smallest node non-EUV can address? Like, obviously the switch happened at 7 nanometer, but is it going to, do you think, go down to 5 and so on? Or
I do think so. I think that we will see that even though EUV is becoming more accessible, right, in terms of more tools being available, and the cost of the tools and the cost of the support equipment going down, the cost of masks going down, it still is a substantial change. I think we're going to see an opportunity for some non-EUV manufacturers pushing down to the 5 nanometer node, because the controls, the material learning are there that are going to allow to still able to achieve the tolerances necessary for 5 nanometer using optical only. And if you had the EUV tool, it might not be quite as economic a solution, but there still is a large investment, and manufacturers are always taking a risk as they push to those new nodes. I think a large question is going to come down to where the designs come in. If there continues to be designs in those high single-digit nodes that are coming in that are available for maybe not the largest manufacturers who have the EUV capability, but for the manufacturers that don't quite, then I think that they'll definitely push down below 7 nanometer with optical.
That's so interesting. Yeah. It's economics playing into it too, right?
Economics drive everything.
Yeah, that's what John Madden used to say. Let's see, just switching topics here. I know that you're quite an inventor, and that's a great fit for this industry, really, right? But you've done things that's outside of the mask or even semiconductor manufacturing in your long career at IBM, right? How many patents do you have?
I've lost track. I think somewhere around 250.
Yeah, 250 patents. Yeah. So what was that like?
Well, I was really fortunate early on in my career at IBM. I was in a development organization, and at the time, right, IBM was advertising their proficiency in patents. Right, it was a key piece. So there was a large community that helped me understand the patenting process and really the value of thinking about things from the perspective of patenting. I try to teach that when I work with engineers now, because patenting is a very tangible example to show you how you look at things that are novel, non-obvious, and valuable. A good patent, a patent's only useful if someone wants to make it, and it's only useful if it's cheaper than the way that problems are currently being solved. So I think that to go back to your previous discussion on how far can we push optical technology, it's innovations thinking about how we will do that. They're exactly the type of thing that drive patent-based thinking of what are those novel, non-obvious, and value-add solutions that are not currently available from looking at the problem at slightly different angles, bringing your history there.
Novel, non-obvious, and value-add, right? Yeah. Good principle. 250, these are US patents, right?
Those are US patents, yes.
Not counting the international one.
Right.
Well, it's pretty amazing. What would be the biggest one? oh, no, actually, I guess that's hard to say, but what's some of the manufacturing oriented stuff?
Sure. So I had quite a few that covered before I actually got into the mask industry. Yeah. Some of my favorite family of them were around FinFET manufacture.
FinFET.
Yes. One of the early tasks that I had was being charged with fabricating some of the first FinFETs. I believe it was an 130 nanometer node.
Wow.
It's sort of hard to believe that we needed them there. But I have a number of patents around the process for how to actually make FinFETs using existing technology.
So from invention to actual production use took what, 20 years or something?
Yeah, probably close to that. Not quite, because I believe that the work we did on that was in the early 2000s. So
okay. So
15 or 17 years before it came into reality, and probably 10 nodes later.
But that's what it takes, right? EUV took 30 years. It's just, yeah.
But just to go back to the other piece, in terms of my other most valuable patent, if you ask my mom, it's probably the one that she has taped on the wall next to my kindergarten handprint.
Which is?
That's a first patent that I believe that has to do with SRAF placement rules. It was how to place SRAFs using manual code and some early EDA software.
Wow, that's quite something. That's amazing. Yeah. So, bringing back that innovation to the whole community, what do you think is the secret to overall BACUS community? How does it keep doing this? Semiconductor in general, right? But in the mask making community too, there's a lot of invention, and somehow somebody comes up with something to keep Moore's laws going, even though sometimes it looks hopeless.
It's amazing. Every year you can look at this industry and say, we're done inventing, we're done the problems. It's just turning the crank and tweaking it out. But every year new problems come up. Just as the keynotes talked about last year, we have new problems introduced on, I see, two main axes. We've got the technology related to AI, right? That's going to drive mask volumes, mask performance to get to new levels. And then we've got high NA. While they're complementary, they are two different and actually drive two different problem sets. So there's always those new problems coming up. But to go back to what you mentioned about the BACUS community, I think that's why this meeting is so particularly successful, and actually why we're seeing so much growth in the attendance lately, because there's so many good ideas being shared here. It's an open community that looks to share the learning, share the knowledge, recognizing that the semiconductor industry needs masks to succeed, and we need each other. We're a tight-knit community between the suppliers, the vendors, the tool equipment, the EDA suppliers. All of those pieces are needed together. And just like the discussion on the 6x12 masks, we have to march in step to do it effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. What Frank Wood said in large format mask thing really hit me. It's, his thing is mask community enabled stuff like curvilinear design, right? Mask industry is not going to be the barrier to anything, right, including large format, right? It's that, I don't know, determination, we're going to invent, whatever we have to do, we're going to invent, and we're going to just make it happen.
And make sure we're not in the way. We don't want to be the rate limiting step
yeah.
to semiconductor progress.
Yeah. That's, I think that's a great mission, and it takes all of us together. And that's why I think the work that you do with BACUS and the community getting together and being able to talk with each other and work together, I think that's why it's so important. Yeah. So changing topics entirely, okay. I know that you're a golfer.
I am.
Right? And
not as good as you, I don't think.
No way. But, in golf, sometimes I talk about the golf analogy, and I go, basically, golf is a percentage game, right? Nobody's perfect, right? Right. The best golfer in the world has a dispersion, right? And then, so it's kind of like manufacturing, right? It's controlling the variation. That's important, right? That's
absolutely
right. And what's your?
I think there's a number of other analogies there, right? I always say when I'm golfing with friends, you aim for the hole, but you plan not to hit it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know you're not going to get there. You have to have the contingency plan. There's a reason we carry putters.
That's
Ideally, none of us would.
right.
I think there's other aspects relative to sometimes you need to take the indirect route.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's the smarter one, and sometimes there's not. Sometimes you have to go over the water because there's not another chance to have it in the game. Another thing that I actually really think that correlates between golf and real life is there's always the next hole and there's always the next problem. Just like there's always the next problem, there's the next course. That's what I see about why I love to come to work every day, what I see in the energy of the photomask community. I was actually just discussing last night that it's hard to believe that we thought that they were problems when we were making 130 nanometer chrome on glass masks. But it was just as exciting as the problems we're making today. Making EUV and high NA masks and getting them introduced into the problem. That's the hole we're playing today, and who knows what the hole we're going to be playing tomorrow is.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great lesson. So, BACUS, now that you're handing off the presidency to somebody else, I don't know who it is yet. Like, do you have any advice? Like, what would you tell them?
It's a good question. It's an interesting job because it's a community of volunteers in terms of the BACUS Steering Committee. And honestly, I like to remind people about that. And that's what I'd recommend as a key piece, to remind people that they volunteer in the BACUS community, not necessarily for the prestige. Most of the members don't need to put it on their resume. We're doing it there to try to improve the community. We're trying to improve the sharing of information, and to give everyone a format for us to get together and be a single voice and a single interface between both the suppliers, the mask manufacturers, and the fabs. So that's, I think, what we need to continue to try to do, to create that central information hub and communication portal outward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sense of commitment to contribution, right? I mean, I feel that from you, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Jed.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.